If you have a bad habit of constantly scrolling on Pinterest but you're afraid to try out those new recipes, well, this video is for you because I tested 5 viral pumpkin pie recipes to help you find the perfect one for your Thanksgiving dinner. I'm not going to go in depth on how to make each one of these pies, but I will rate them on how beginner friendly they are, how beautiful they look in the end, all the mistakes I made, and of course we'll do a taste test, and I'm going to get some of my friends and family to join in so that we help you decide which one is best for you and your family. The first pie up is a Marshmallow Pumpkin Pie. This pie was by far the easiest one to make, and if you have absolutely zero cooking skills, then this is the pie for you. While it's a no-bake pie, you do have to melt the marshmallows on the stovetop, and the recipe doesn't tell you how long this should take, but it took me 11 minutes to melt everything together on a low burner. Once the mixture has cooled, you're going to fold it in gently with some whipped topping, and then dump it into a store-bought graham cracker crust. As far as presentation goes, I'm just gonna say this now, pumpkin pies are never the prettiest pies out there. But this one does have a nice color to it, and you don't have to worry about it cracking or burning in the oven like you would with a traditional pumpkin pie. So I'm giving its looks a 3 out of 5 just because it's a little bit on the simplistic side, and the store-bought crust says, I didn't really want to put a lot of effort into this. Now let's see how it tastes. I do like how it holds its shape. That is extremely sweet. This is like something, you know, a child would dream up. You do get a little bit of that marshmallow flavor coming through, but mostly it's just super, super sweet. So this pie is gonna be great for people who love super sweet desserts. You want a light textured pie that doesn't taste too rich or heavy. You want a foolproof, beginner-friendly pie recipe. And you want something you can make 2 to 3 days before Thanksgiving. Now next up is the cream pie. For this one, you're gonna make a cookie crust in a 9-inch deep dish pie pan. The recipe calls for using ginger snap cookies, which I did, but you can also use graham crackers if you prefer. Overall, I would rate this as a pretty beginner-friendly recipe. It's nearly foolproof with a no-bake pie, and while there's a little bit more steps involved in the marshmallow pie because you have to make your own crust, it's still a really simple crust that's hard to mess up, so I'm going to rate this 4 out of 5. One thing you want to remember when you're making any sort of pie with cream cheese is that cream cheese really needs to be at room temperature before you start mixing it, or else you're gonna wind up with chunks of cream cheese throughout your filling, which isn't very nice. Now, the recipe does call for making your own whipped topping to put on top of the pie, but I happen to have an extra container of Cool Whip from a pie I didn't end up making, which I will talk about in just a second. So instead of making my own whipped topping, I just used that container of Cool Whip that I already had. And honestly, it tastes just as good and it makes the pie even easier to make. Now, presentation-wise, I actually think this is a really beautiful pie, and it would be really nice if I left a little bit more of that pumpkin filling showing on the edges, and I also dusted it with a little cinnamon on top just to give it a little something extra. So I'm gonna give this pie a 5 out of 5 for presentation. Now let's get into the taste test. Let's get some of that gingerbread crust too. Woo! That gingerbread crust gives it a real kick at the end. It's not like a real cream pie, like if you think of the texture of like a coconut cream pie. It's definitely not like that. It's way more light and airy. And the gingerbread crust is probably not for everyone. So if you're worried people aren't gonna like ginger, go with a graham cracker crust. You can't go wrong with that. So who is this pie good for? If you love the flavor of cheesecake, you will like this pie. And if you want an incredibly light and airy pie after a heavy Thanksgiving dinner, then this one checks that box too. This is also great if you want a no-bake pie, and if you don't like a heavy pumpkin spice flavor, I think you'll like this as well. Now I'm gonna briefly talk about a bonus 6th pie that I didn't end up making, and that is this triple layer pumpkin pie. I needed 2 boxes of pumpkin pie spice pudding, which I could not find in any stores near me. So I decided if a key ingredient is that hard to find, it's not a good pie to make for your Thanksgiving dinner. And I also decided if it doesn't contain any actual pumpkin in it, then it doesn't count as a pumpkin pie. Okay, now moving on to the chocolate pumpkin pie. For this recipe, you're gonna make a chocolate cookie crust, and you'll want a 9-inch regular size pie plate for this. It looks like in the original recipe, they used a deep dish, and you can see from the picture that the pie does not fill up a deep dish pan all the way. And it called for using chocolate wafers, which again was something I could not find in my store, so I grabbed chocolate Teddy Grahams instead, and honestly, they worked just fine. However, if you wanna make this pie easier, then just go ahead and buy a chocolate store-bought crust. As for how beginner-friendly this pie is, I'm gonna rate it a 3 out of 5. There are multiple steps if you do make your own pie crust, and then you have to make the filling and a ganache to go on top. And I actually screwed up the ganache part. Call it recipe dyslexia, I don't know, but after making 5 pies, that was the last thing I needed to do. Instead of doing the ganache recipe, I ended up making the drizzle instead, which ended up being way too thick. And so then I made a ganache to cover up that mistake, which the pie ended up looking fine in the end, but it does have more chocolate than the recipe actually calls for on top. But anytime there's that many steps in a recipe, just introduces more room for error, which is why I had to give it a 3 out of 5. Look-wise, I do think this pie looks really nice, so I'm going to give it a 4 out of 5. Now let's go ahead and try it. I love chocolate, but I think it sounds super weird to go with a pumpkin pie. So we're gonna see here what it tastes like. I honestly can't decide if I like it or not. I think the chocolate is a bit overpowering for the pumpkin. So being that it's supposed to be a pumpkin pie, I'm not sure I love that. It's good, but it's not a pumpkin pie to me. So it is pretty chocolate heavy, but I think that's my mistake. So who's this pie good for? If you're a chocoholic, you're gonna like this pie. If you don't like strong pumpkin pie spice flavors, this one is a good one. If you love rich desserts that you need a glass of milk with, and if you don't mind multiple steps in a recipe. Next up is the salted caramel pumpkin pie. This one I wanted to make because I love salted caramel, so I was excited to see how it would turn out. I did make my own pie crust for this, which I will tell you was a horrible disaster. It was way too hard and chewy, which I think is because I added too much water to the dough. One way to ensure you don't get a crust that's too tough is by doing half butter and half shortening, but I will say it doesn't taste as good as an all butter crust, so I've been trying to get better at making these. When I can get it to turn out, it's beautiful, but I did not get it to turn out this time. If you don't want to bother with trying to make your own homemade crust, I'm here to tell you it's okay to buy a store-bought one. And for this recipe, you're going to want to use a 9-inch deep dish pie plate. My pie plate was 9.5 inches, so my filling didn't quite go to the top like it should. Now, I royally screwed up this pie in the end. The recipe told me to let the pie cool in the oven with the door open, but I had 2 more pies to make and was impatient and didn't do that. So my pie cracked like Hawkins after a Vecna attack. But I can't really blame the recipe for this. However, I do have to give this pie a 2 out of 5 stars for how easy it is, because I proved that there's a lot of things that can go wrong with it. Presentation-wise, I gotta give my pie a 1 out of 5. However, the pie in the pictures looks much prettier than mine, so if you can get this pie to turn out, you're looking at a 4 out of 5. But if you make any mistakes, it's gonna end in a disaster. Now for the taste test. Honestly, it just tastes like a pumpkin pie. I'm not really getting a lot of salted caramel coming through. It's really creamy, and there is a little bit of salted caramel. So here's my final thoughts on the taste. It's a little too light on the salted caramel. So what I'm thinking I would do if I made this again is I would do a whipped topping layer and then do a drizzle of salted caramel just to help boost that flavor. All right, so who is this pie good for? If you want a classic pumpkin pie with a barely there twist, if you're not afraid to make your own homemade pie crust, and you have time to make a second one if the first ends in a disaster. Now the last pie is a Streusel Pumpkin Pie. This pie also uses a homemade pie crust, and again, both of my pie crusts turned out pretty bad. Pie crust is tricky. We all know that one person who thinks it's so easy and they don't understand why everybody just doesn't make a homemade pie crust. But the truth is, I don't think you can just follow a recipe and make a perfect pie crust. There's a learning curve and a trial and error that you have to do, which I am still in the process myself. And if you're interested in trying to see me crack the code of pie crust for beginners, let me know in the comments. The pumpkin pie filling itself is really easy to make, and again, more like a classic pumpkin filling. However, because you are most likely trying to make a homemade crust, but it's fine if you want to buy the store-bought, and because you have to make a streusel topping, I'm going to give it a 3 out of 5 for how beginner-friendly it is. When the pumpkin pie is in the oven baking, that's when you're going to make the streusel topping. This isn't hard to do, but it is an extra step. As for presentation, I'm going to give this 3 out of 5 pies. It looks nice, it's just a bit brown. I think if I make this pie again, I would actually leave little bits of the pumpkin filling showing between the crumble, and that would look really nice. Now let's go on to the taste test. Now I normally really like streusel topping, so that's why I wanted to try this pie. It is, that's pretty good. I really like the crunch that the streusel topping gives the pumpkin pie, and also I think the pumpkin pie filling itself is really delicious. Yeah, I'm really liking this one, but I want to try it with one other thing real quick. Just a little bit of whipped cream. That's really good. I think I would add just a little bit more cinnamon to the streusel topping, but this is really good. This pie is good for you if you love a classic pumpkin pie, but you're looking for a crowd-pleasing twist on the classic recipe. You aren't afraid to make a homemade crust, and you don't want to have to worry about cracks in your pie. So for me personally, the Streusel Pumpkin Pie was my favorite. It's a classic pumpkin pie filling with a buttery topping with just the right amount of crunch. My husband's favorite pie was also the streusel. My mom's favorite was the cream pie, and my friend Daisy loved the chocolate pie. And if you liked this video and want me to do something similar for the Christmas holiday season, let me know in the comments what recipes you would like to see. I hope everyone has a happy Thanksgiving. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. And you don't want to have to worry about cracks in your pie. That sounds like a euphemism. Lordy.